Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cybersecurity Bridge podcast. I'm Jon Oltsik, former industry analyst, cybersecurity community activist, and I am just delighted to be here with episode 2. If you're new to the Cybersecurity Bridge podcast, each episode will have 3 sections. We'll talk about the present state of a particular aspect of cybersecurity. We'll talk about where that goes in the future. And then we'll talk the cybersecurity bridge, which is how do we get from the present to the future state? Now, I am absolutely tickled pink to introduce my guest, who I know as Laz, and everyone in cybersecurity knows as Laz. But Laz, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hey, John. Thank you for having me this morning. I am Demetrios Lazarikos. Laz is probably easier. And a career CISO, and done some pretty amazing things in my career. By way of background, John, I had my first computer when I was 12. I was emancipated at 17 after the Air Force recruited me. And then I went and traveled the world with the United States Air Force and had an amazing career, pre-military, post-military, and had an opportunity to step into the CISO role several times. I've done that. Been a tech founder 3 times. And today I work with executives, the C-suite, on aligning technology and business outcomes to what they're building within their organization.
And you're a heck of a guy, Laz. And just a little tidbit is I've only ridden in an autonomous vehicle once, and it was with Laz. So appreciated that.
Yeah, no worries. I like to think of myself as an early adopter. I embrace technology and try to find ways to enable businesses, the business outcome, leveraging that technology. So you talk about autonomous driving. I mean, what an amazing time in our career, autonomous driving. Who would have thought even a decade ago that it would be this powerful?
Very true. And speaking of how technology influences business, we're going to talk about that. But before we do, Laz, we're going to play a little game of cybersecurity trivia.
Okay.
Okay. So from 1996 to 1999, there was a pretty significant cyber attack on the U.S. government. It affected DOD. It affected NASA. It affected the Department of Energy. It was due to a vulnerability in a Unix system, and the adversary exfiltrated terabytes of data. Now, was that cyber event, was that known as Moonlight Maze, Titan Rain, or Buckshot Yankee?
Oh, I want to say Buckshot Yankee.
No, I'm sorry. You get the parting gifts here on that one. It was Moonlight Maze. Again, for our audience, if you aren't familiar with this was really the catalyst for a lot of federal government activity in cybersecurity. So look up Moonlight Maze and learn about it if you can. But let's move on, Laz, to our topic. We're going to talk about skill sets and how skill sets in cybersecurity and business are changing rapidly. And so I read something today that kind of scared me. And so this was a Korn Ferry survey. They surveyed CEOs, and 82% of the CEOs they surveyed said that AI will have, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. 40% of employees said that IT is the one that's responsible for AI policy and implementation. So it's not 50%, it's not 80%, but 40% still believe AI is linked to IT. Now, from your perspective, let's talk about skill sets. That's completely wrong from your perspective. And what do you think of the skill sets today in terms of cybersecurity and AI?
Well, let's peel that back a little bit. I think about AI as it's a new technology, right? It's no different than mobile or cloud was or client server architectures decades ago. So with any new technology, I have to have a group inside the organization that's championing this, this solution, right? So if I'm choosing AI as this topic here, and I'm putting it in the hands of IT, I think that's going to be an ultimate fail. And what I mean by that is we have to have business alignment. We have to have the business teaching us what they want AI to do. I can't operate in a vacuum and guess on what needs to happen. I have to have cross-functional roles to be able to go to marketing, to business development, sales, operations, finance, and say, look, AI is going to be used in the future, if not now, and what do I need to do to embrace it? But I think I like to, whenever embracing new technology, I always like to think about it as like crawl, walk, run. There is new technology, there are new requirements that I need to embrace, but I also have to have success. And what I mean by that is, what is the business outcome? How am I going to align to it? How am I going to enable it? You can't put the AI policy all on IT. It has to be driven from the top down.
All right. So in your experience, what are the skill sets that we have today that are necessary for the AI implementation, and where are we lacking?
Yeah. So I think, okay, I'm an engineer by background, and I've made the shift and really embraced business operations, technology, and management. I would encourage anybody that's working on an AI project to basically take communication, management, and defining outcomes, KPIs or OKRs that are associated with the business, and then aligning those across the entire organization. So communication, setting the business goals, and then being able to understand how that outcome is going to impact the business, and that's through our KPIs or OKRs. That's part one. And part two is I, as a business leader, have to embrace this new technology, but I should be reading about it, and I should be partnering with my teams internally to understand what they need AI to do, what they're envisioning. But more importantly, I need to be talking to my peers inside of industry, outside of industry, to understand what they're seeing with AI, successful AI implementations.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And really, you should be thinking outside the box and learning what AI can do. But first, you have to understand the business, understand where you are in terms of automation, where you are in terms of communication, and then go from there. But you have to embrace that. And are organizations embracing that, or do they see this sort of as something they just plug into what they're doing?
Yeah, I think early days of AI, I've been in AI now for a couple of years, actually several years, working on business enablement for AI and technology. One of the things that I've seen where AI fails is everybody thinks you turn it on and you just walk away and it's going to magically take care of everything that you're working on. And it's like any other technology. It has to have a sponsor, a project, and think about it as crawl, then walk, then run, and being able to take the low-hanging fruit and the wins that you need out of the AI solution. So for example, let's say your marketing team, this is a real world example. A marketing team wanted to increase their demand gen using marketing tools that are out there, and they want to leverage AI. I think one of the challenges is once you turn it on and you have your use case, you're going to figure out pretty quickly that use case is 10 times what you expected. So there are new use cases that will come out of the use of AI that we're not expecting. So those are awesome benefits to have. But once you turn it on for one group, or you're looking at how you want to impact the business, it's important to recognize that you're going to have new use cases. So if you wanted 20% lift on demand gen, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, I can automate this and write blogs and send emails and send copy and write a confirmation letter, tie it to my CRM, all of a sudden that changes that initial goal. If the initial goal was 20% lift and outbound reach for demand gen, and now all of a sudden I've got 6 new use cases, I, as a business leader and technologist, have to not only embrace that, but I have to be willing to move quickly to allow that to work in my environment. And that's just one business unit. That's just one group that's leveraging AI. I have to apply that across all groups, including my third parties.
All right, Laz. Well, I'm going to tap into your experience because everything you just said to me says this is going to cascade. You think it's going to be this, but it's actually going to be this. I'm a CISO now, or you were a CISO, so I'll ask you directly. That scares me. That scares me as a CISO because things are cascading quickly, and it's not just AI, it's IoT, it's other autonomous types of technologies, it's cloud. How do you get your arms around this if you're a CISO?
One of the things I'm also an adjunct professor, and I mentor a handful of up-and-coming next generation CISOs and CTOs. And what I coach them, as well as the CEOs and CFOs of clients that I work with, we have to embrace not only the technology, but we have to update our processes. And it's scary to think about it just as a CISO, because I figure I'm on an island by myself. Who's in this with me? It's an opportunity for us to redefine our processes and what we're doing with technology to support our business. One of the things that I found as success for a CISO is partnering not only with the business, but partnering with the different groups, the third parties that we're going to be integrating into our business. I mentioned earlier, define that outcome and what you want. I think it's also critical not only to define the outcome, but look at the processes. And because technology is changing so quickly, this isn't hey, we're going to watch this for 6 months. This is, one of those approaches. We have to watch this for 6 hours, 6 days, and be able to move pretty quickly. And what I like about, embracing new technology, it's not just the underpinnings of the technology, but the technology is moving really quickly. Does it scare me? Absolutely. But I also feel that we need to embrace it and understand it. So every week we're looking at what is the outcome, measuring performance. Did it achieve our goal? Did it exceed, or did it fall short? Then we can make course corrections and updates to what we need to do. Being in a business today is so much different than it was a decade ago, 2 decades ago. And unless we move quickly, there are going to be considerable things that we're not seeing yet. I mean, we're seeing a lot of, third-party risk management, AI integration, AI with third parties. We're seeing a lot of those trends today, but I would encourage that all business stakeholders, all CISOs, all CTOs, take a step back, look at the outcome, and make sure that they're aligning and educating across the entire organization and with third parties.
So going back to your comment, we've got to change processes. One of the processes I think of is securing the data. So can you be a little bit more specific for the audience of where are we today and what needs to change?
Absolutely. So in a prior life, I was an auditor. I was an auditor, and one of the things, John, I think that I should share is I keep my credentials active. So I have my CISA, CISM, and several other certifications, CRISC and CSSLP, and QTE. Anyway, I'm just thinking about all the different dimensions of education and awareness. Every time, as a former auditor, I always look at where's the data stored, processed, transmitted, or accessed. As an executive, I want that data so it can enable the business, but I have to wear, multiple hats now. If I'm a CISO and I'm in charge of securing the company and its assets, one of the things that's falling into my arena now is data protection. And data protection is not something that's unique. It's something that's always been top of mind for the CISOs. I may not have direct responsibility for it or accountability. It may be with legal, it may be with finance or ops, but as a practitioner, one of the things that I found to be successful in my career is aligning with those groups to make sure that we understand where's the data supported, accessed, transmitted, and accessed. So it's amazing, data is everywhere now. And because of that, data is really a new way to leverage information from within the organization and with your existing third parties or your different stakeholders. It's something that we have to not only be aware of, but we have to be willing to support it in an agile environment that we've never seen before.
Yeah, and I think just a side comment from me, I think of this challenge with responsibility around data management, and I think of healthcare, where in finance, it's roughly around 30% of the data is considered sensitive. In healthcare, it's like 90%. And then you add AI, and that's a challenge for the CISO. But let's move forward. Let's talk about the future. So project 2 to 3 years out. What does the CISO role look like? How does it change? What does a practitioner role look like? How does that change? And are there things that that practitioners should be thinking about today?
Sounds good. The role has changed significantly. So we look at historical patterns and trends. You're asking me to project to the future. One of the things I like to do is look at history, pick out the patterns, and then move ourselves forward. If we're thinking about the future and future-proofing our businesses and our industry, we have to be aware of two things. One is technology is not stopping. We are going to continue to innovate. And I, as a CISO, have to embrace innovation because it's enabling the business. That's part one. Number two, if I can leverage that technology and work with early stage companies to help shape the product, the platform, or the service, I'm actually helping shape the industry, because the tools that were invested in 10 years ago are not the tools that we need to invest in the future. So I mentioned, redefining processes. Now is the time to also redefine how we work with emerging tech, whether it's technology by itself or cybersecurity solutions. The two are going to keep evolving at a rapid pace, and I need to be aligned to those. And when I say we need, this is, learning from experience, right? I feel like sometimes I've got more scars than I do wins. And so it's like, look, I'm sharing with you some of the things that have worked for me and my lessons learned, so we can get there faster. I'd like to think that by having this podcast, John, and your series of podcasts, we can leave the industry better than when we got into it, and then also help everybody in the space level up on their game.
Well, that's the goal, Laz, and from your mouth to God's ears, I say. But so if I'm a practitioner, let's take something that I'm pretty familiar with, like you're a SOC analyst. What should you be thinking about now? What will it look like in 2 to 3 years?
Yep. SOC analyst role. If I'm a SOC analyst today, I would encourage you to not only embrace the technology, but experiment with it. Time box some different experiments that you can have for automating low-hanging fruit, automating mundane tasks, automate different areas, and start to build on not only the automation, but that's the core underpinnings, but then creating dashboards and creating performance metrics that are aligned to the business. So for example, if I'm a SOC analyst, I've now automated this, I've experimented with it, and I've seen a pattern that I really, really need to raise up. Show how it's going to impact the business. What's the biggest risk to revenue? How are we going to show the business what we do and modify any of those reports so that they're in business terms aligning to what's going to impact us, whether it's per hour, per day, per week, per month, or on a quarterly basis?
Yeah, that's important. But I know we're talking about skill sets, but something just occurred to me, and that is, with everything changing so fast, your technology stack, your security technology stack may be in a constant state of flux. And so that's kind of counterintuitive or counterproductive in a security person's mind. And we've got all this platformization that suggests, no, we need to standardize on a platform. How does that all play out?
So I believe that the successful security leaders are going to be the ones that not only embrace technology, but are able to shift and align to the business. In the example I provided earlier in the discussion about marketing, what if marketing wants to change out that demand engine and they want to flip the switch and have a new third party in a matter of minutes? I need to be comfortable with that. As crazy as that sounds, and we've never been taught that before as security leaders, we have to embrace not only that change, but the ability to move that quickly. Gone are the days of, experimenting for months and then evaluating through a POC for weeks. Those days are gone. If somebody on the business side tells us that they want to flip a switch and try something new, I have to be able to support that very quickly. And how do I get there? Best practice would be, does the third-party organization have a SOC 2, a high trust certification? Do they have, things in place for third-party risk management, the controls and the technologies and the people that are managing that? I have to be comfortable with as a security leader to say, yes, go ahead and make that switch. And if we need to dive into something else deeper, we'll go ahead and do that. But at a bare minimum, embrace the technology, align to the business, and tell them it's okay to flip that switch.
What I hear you saying is that security is going to be an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So establishing the frameworks, establishing the processes, establishing the right skill sets so that you can plug and play these different components and adhere or at least support and enable the business. That's really the upfront work that you have to do as a CISO.
Absolutely. And I think it's critical to do that now instead of waiting a month from now, a year from now. Building out those controls and those frameworks that you're supporting, John, that is the way that we win. And it's not, we have to solve everything and be 100% accurate. It's how do we take the amount of information that we have today, build a relationship with that third party or two or three, and be able to flip that switch. I have to understand where the biggest risk is. I have to understand what the company's risk appetite and risk tolerance is before I can, support flipping that switch. At the same time, I've got to have my own internal controls and processes in place to make sure that we're all successful.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, everyone, as soon as AI comes up, and this is true, this has historically been true, but everybody goes to the agentic AI or ChatGPT, or they talk about the data and the LLMs. And all of this preparation is something that we don't talk about. But what I hear you saying is that this should be really a priority for every organization to kind of build that infrastructure, build that those frameworks so that you can adapt quickly.
Absolutely. And it can be done. It can be done successfully. And one of the things that I love about technology is working with the cutting edge and looking at how that's going to shape the business, the industry, and our practice. And it can be done successfully as long as you have the right support, processes, and the teams behind it, making sure that it's an enabler and not a blocker.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really leads us to the final section of this episode, and that's a cybersecurity bridge. So how do we get from the present to the future? Now, we've really been talking about this, and that is things like establishing frameworks, establishing standards, probably building some type of integration tools or integration architecture so that you can swap pieces out quickly. But let's get back to the skill set. So we're here today. We need to get to a certain place. I noticed today both MIT and the Wharton School have executive programs for the executives and AI. So you could look at that. I don't know how good those programs are. But what else? What else, Laz? What do we have to do to get to a successful period with AI and other emerging technologies?
I would encourage everybody to stay curious, talk to their peers, and attend events and listen to podcasts like this. It's critical. It's like breathing, right? It's 2025. I have to be able to support my business, but I also have to be able to support what I'm doing in the future and make sure not only is it relevant, but that I'm understanding what those next 2 to 3 years look like. So in a perfect world, those skill sets are maintaining curiosity, being able to communicate what I'm doing and take that and bubble it up to business terms, and then being able to look across the horizon and say, okay, this is our organization, this is my team and how we're protecting this organization, but then looking out, because those third parties will, or, as they're tying into our infrastructure, I need to be able to understand what they're doing and how that data, going back to our discussion earlier, is stored, processed, and transmitted. Without the visibility of understanding what's coming, partnering with the business, and then being able to talk about third-party risk, I'm setting myself up for some very big challenges in the future if I don't do those as a practitioner.
Let's talk about the role of regulation. So we've seen the EU establish some regulations. We've seen some in the United States, but do you anticipate that, and what will that do to change or to drive this future?
Yeah, I think what I believe is that the regulators are typically behind what's happening with technology, and it's sad, but it's this is my opinion. I personally experienced this firsthand with different regulators coming in and talking about what's happening and what we need to do. I think one of the things I've learned a long time ago in my career, when a regulator walks in and says, hey, I'm here to help you, it's really that they're reaching out for an assistance. They need some help. And maybe it's an opportunity for us to partner with them and show them, hey, listen, here's how we're leveraging this emerging technology. These are the processes that are associated with it, and this is how we're justifying this from a business perspective. The regulators have a hard time right now because speed is really against them. It's great for the business and technology, but it's really against them because they're trying to keep up. And if I'm moving my business at the speed of innovation and the regulator can't keep up, we have two choices. One, partner with them and educate them to show them how we're making this possible, or leave them behind. And I am not a fan of leaving the regulator behind. I'm a big fan of bringing them along. So when you mention things like the EU and different initiatives that are happening right now with AI and other technology that we're seeing for PII data protection and some of the other controls that need to be put in place, wrapping this technology gift, if you will, to the business becomes critical, because the regulators are going to have to embrace it, understand it, and be willing to say, this is what I know to be true. This is how we protect it. That was a long answer, John, but I wanted you to have a little bit more context about it.
That's okay. That was a good answer. How about this? We know from our experience, that there'll be some business that has a major failure, and maybe it's a security breach, maybe it's just poor execution, but we know that will happen. And how do you think something like that will impact the future of the use of AI?
I believe that the companies that don't embrace AI will be, they'll have a disadvantage from a competitive standpoint in trying to stay ahead of where they are in the industry when it's, against their peers or their competition. Part one. Part two, I think that what will happen is that if there's anything catastrophic, the catastrophic pieces that I've experienced, even myself, they could be failed IT attempts that didn't align to the business, or it could be a breach because somebody was moving so quickly and they didn't really want to embrace security as part of the underpinnings of the company. As we move forward, I think it's imperative, it's crucial that we not only talk to the business, but explain to them what's happening, why, and be able to talk about the biggest risks to revenue and not talk about speeds and feeds. And if it's an AI implementation, the things I worry about with AI implementations are, the data sets. Is it good data coming in? What's that data set look like? Is it bad data? Am I going to have a big risk in 6 months where I have to go back and retrofit or scrape it and do it all over again? That's horrible, because that not only impacts the business, but then our industry. So sometimes, John, I think we have to slow down to go fast. And this is one of those times where I believe that we need to make sure that we're doing all the right things with AI, in this example, AI or technology, data protection, and securing the business to allow them to function.
Okay, Laz, I could talk to you for hours. We're getting kind of close to the end, but I want to go back to skill sets. So you've got the experience as a CISO. You're a CISO now. Let's say you're a Fortune 500 company. You've got a pretty large security staff. What are you thinking in terms of training that staff? What are you thinking in terms of recruiting and hiring for that staff in today's world?
So a couple of things. For training and certification, I would encourage everybody to look at I call them the usual suspects, but there are new usual suspects that are propping up. And those are, like OWASP AI, the Open Worldwide Application Security Project AI initiative. There are things, that are happening with ISACA and ISSA, different regional groups for B-sides. And, I look at the world, globally, then, nationally, then regionally, then locally. And, those areas, find a group that has training certifications in different areas of automation, AI, technology, cloud, digital transformation. That's part one. Align to those groups. And some of those, like I mentioned, OWASP AI, that's a volunteer group that we can, and I'm a member and I'm an active researcher and contributor, but I also think it's important because I learned so much from the peer group that I'm working with there. The second thing I would do is I would start looking at what are the things that help me with automation. And automation today is going to look a lot different than automation 5 years from now. So thinking about it like a graduation path, I need to understand what those tools and technologies are as an engineer. I have to be able to take that skill set and translate it into business terms. So those three big skill sets: get involved with different groups, whether it's, local, regional, national, international. Stay ahead of the curve by experimenting with new technologies and being curious. And as you're doing that, start understanding what that skill set is going to give me when I take it to the business and show them what I'm doing. Because I'm always looking at the outcome of the business. I'm looking at what's going to enable the business. How is the business going to win? We want to win as business. In the business, we want to win. And as security practitioners and leaders, I would encourage you to have an opportunity and make the time to meet the people. If you haven't met with your business team, or, you're aspiring, to be there. I mean, the Fortune 500, you're absolutely going to be at, hopefully, I say absolutely, but I'm going to go back and say, hopefully we have a seat at the table in the Fortune 500. And it's really the next step down where we're going to start seeing some of the challenges with getting the business's attention. I think also, when you talk about the skills shortage, John, it's an opportunity to recruit from within. And what I found to be successful is early in my career, recruiting from within, because the people from within the organization that have a need or a desire to learn about cybersecurity can become an extension of your team, whether they're a security champion or somebody that wants to join your team, 6 months from now, 12 months from now. Help bring them along. Maybe you have a quarterly lunch and learn to educate the teams about what's happening with technology and security, data protection, and the regulatory impact that it's going to have on the business. There are so many ways to do this. And I think with the skills shortage and some of the challenges that we have finding qualified and trained people, it's an opportunity for us as leaders to take that back in-house and then, bring people along.
So what I hear you saying is you're CISO, you are investing in your people, you're investing in training, you're bringing them along. And sometimes people say, well, if I do that, then they'll go somewhere else. But I don't think you can afford not to do it.
I think it's imperative. It's imperative that we train our team. So what am I scared of? Okay. I train somebody and all of a sudden they leave the company. Well, that's career growth. If you're not taking care of them, they're going to leave the company anyway. Let's take care of our people and do the right thing for the business, do the right thing for our teams, and do the right thing for the industry. I'm a big believer in education, training, and making sure that we're doing the right things to train our people.
All right, Laz. So my last question to all my guests is the same. What's the one thing that you would recommend? And I guess I'll segment this a little bit. One thing you'd recommend for the business and one thing you'd recommend for the CISO.
Yeah. So for me, I think on the business side, for recommendations for the business, we know we're going to embrace technology, but let's do it with the right approach. Let's not just say I go home and I turn something on at home, so that new technology should work the same way across the enterprise. Let's be patient, thoughtful, and inclusive when we're building out anything that's going to enable the business with new technology. On the business, that's on the business side. On the technology side, let's stay curious and always embrace technologies, even though it may not work in our environment. And you may, as you pointed out, John, the business may not be ready for that, or I may not fully understand what the technology is, but embrace the technology because we know technology is not stopping and we know that it's going to be there. So I have to stay current by embracing not only the technology, but then working with that business. It will be an evolution.
It certainly will. It's just a faster evolution than we've had in the past, Laz.
Was it an evolution? Is it an evolution, John, or a revolution? That's a good question.
I think there's both aspects to it. I think right now it's revolutionary, but things will stabilize and become more evolutionary. But we're out of time, Laz. So,
I appreciate it, John.
I really appreciate you being part of the Cybersecurity Bridge. How can people find out more about you, what you're doing?
Yeah, so they can hit me up on LinkedIn. So I am under LinkedIn as I am Laz. So / I am Laz. I'm there on LinkedIn. My full name's not on LinkedIn. And then second way is you can always reach out to me at riskology.io.
And you can certainly reach out to me, and I know how to get in touch with Laz. So thanks again. And for the audience, thanks for participating. Please, please, please give me feedback. Tell me what subjects you want to hear about. Tell me what speakers you want to me to encourage or me to recruit. And I'll see you again in 2 weeks for the next episode of the Cybersecurity Bridge.